Good afternoon, everyone. It's Patty Henderson, the Math Marketing Manager for Pearson Canada, and I want to welcome you to our Pearson Mythology online information session. Just a bit of background information before we get started. As you can see on the screen here, we have attendees in listen mode or mute. The reason we're doing that, a couple of things. We will be recording this webinar for those who are unable to join, and you'll get a recording as well. And it just helps to have better sound quality like that, but I know you might have some questions. So what we will do for this webinar, it takes about 30-35 minutes, and I find that by the time I reach the end, many of your questions might have already been answered. But along the way, if you want to put any questions you have either down on a piece of paper, or there is a chat box that you could put chat in. My colleague Soyen will be gathering all the chat questions, and at the end we'll open up the floor for those questions, and anyone that we haven't answered through the webinar will certainly answer at that time. So I just want to welcome you to our webinar. And a bit of context first. Pearson Mythology and Pearson Mathology is a set of K-8 print and digital resources rooted in academic research and best practices, co-created with over 1,000 classroom teachers and consultants across Canada, and underpinned by a practical Canadian learning progression. Mathology helps you to know where your students are and define next steps for growth, engage students at all levels while building confidence in their math skills, instill a love of and a joy for math through rich, fun math activities and stories, supports job-embedded professional learning for teachers. And for those of you who may be with French immersion, it supports French immersion. Mathology is adapted, not translated, so the language doesn't get in the way of the math. And for those of you who are here from French immersion, just know that we will also be hosting a Mathology.ca webinar or two over the coming weeks. But you're welcome to stay with us today and get a walkthrough of Mathology. Both of them look very similar, and so you'll get a good sense of what it's about. Now, a bit more background. The resources you see in the middle of the screen today, the research and professional learning resources, those are the foundation for Mathology, and some of these titles may look familiar to you, whether it's Taking Shape, which looks at spatial reasoning and thinking, What to Look For, which looks at number sense, as well as Teaching Math with Meaning, and that one is looking at the competencies in math. Across the top of that list, you'll see Math Success for All, and that is our research document. When we did all of our academic research, we've put that together, and if that's something that interests you, let us know at the end, and we can get you a copy of that one. Mathematics learning progression, the purple cover in the middle of that screen, that is our foundation for Mathology. It's our developmental continuum for K-3 and soon from 4 to 9, and it really did help us to figure out where students are, where to go next, and the resources are built upon that, and you'll see that over and over again today. We also have elementary and middle school mathematics, and that is a professional learning resource I think most schools have in one version or another. On the right-hand side, you'll see our classroom resources that were built upon that strong foundation. Across the top, you'll see we have grade 1 and 2 activity kits in English and French. We also have 72 math little books from K to 3, both in English and in French. And today we're going to be taking a look at Mathology.ca, which is our online teacher support. And we have that right now in grade 1 and 2 in English and in beta format for Mathology. When we first started doing research for Mathology, we took a long time looking at the math teaching journey. And every one of you who's on the line today know that it's a time-consuming, multi-step process, starting with long-range planning, to short-term planning, teaching and preparing to teach, through to assessing, reporting, as well as professional learning. And so when you're looking at creating a piece of technology to support our Mathology, we knew that we needed to somehow shorten that journey somewhat. That is the promise of a really good educational technology product. And so Mathology.ca, its proposition is threefold. First of all, we want to simplify and enhance the math teaching journey through smart use of technology. We want to streamline planning, teaching, assessment, and professional learning so that stops on that journey. And for those of you who know Mathology through our print resources, whether it's the activity kits or the Math Little Book, it seamlessly integrates all of those components in one place. So what is Mathology.ca? It's a simple online tool for teachers containing rich math activities and pedagogical supports, and it's powered by 5 core functionalities, which should look familiar to you by now after we looked at that teaching journey. There's search, plan, teach, assess and track, as well as professional learning. All of this aligned to the curricula from your province. And so when we look at Mathology.ca today, know that every province has its own version. The version I will be showing today, it will be the Ontario one, but know that every province has its own version based on your curriculum. So without further ado, I thought I'd take you for a walk through Mathology.ca. And you should see it here shortly. So on my screen, you will see the home screen for Mathology.ca. And when we first did our research, when we started developing this, we talked to a lot of teachers about where you go for really great lessons, and teachers can go to Teacher Paid Teachers or Pinterest or a variety of different sources for lessons, but there are a few challenges with that. One would be the time it takes to look for good lessons online. And the other one would be when you find something, how do you know it is developmentally appropriate for your students and at the right level for the curriculum and supporting that curriculum? So we wanted to put all of our really great lessons from Mathology in one place for you and make them really easy to find. At grade 1, we have over 100 lessons that support your curriculum. And at grade 2, we have over 150 lessons. So you do really need a good search engine with Mathology. And so your homepage is actually your search page. And on this page, you can search for great lessons in a variety of ways. The first one I'm going to walk you through is search by curriculum. So you can see I'm going to click on the button search by curriculum. And you can see that we have grade 1 curriculum here with the strands across the top. Again, this is the Ontario curriculum. Every province has its own version of this in there. You can also search by grade. Right now we have grade 1 and grade 2. Underneath of those strands, you'll see the overall expectations from the curriculum. And when I click on, say that we're in number sense and enumeration, the first overall expectation, if I click on that, will expand down to your specific expectations from your curriculum. Beside each one of those is a little search bar here. When I click on that, you'll see that we have lots of Math Little Books and lessons that support that specific expectation at each grade. So that's one really great way of narrowing down your search and ensuring that you're finding lessons that support your curriculum. There is another way we can search. I talked earlier about our Pearson Canada Learning Progression. It's the foundation for Pearson Mythology, and it's the best way to understand where your students are and their next steps for growth. So you could actually search by the learning progression as well. It's right here to the right of the curriculum. When I press on that, you will see the strands again across the top. Under that, the big ideas from the curriculum. And under each big idea, you'll see the conceptual thread or the concept that we'll be unpacking. And so if I look at the first one, applying the principles of counting, when I click on that, you get a drop down, and you'll see that the learning progression that goes from K up to 3 is on a bit of a slider here, which you can go forward and backwards in. And that's another way that you can search for really great lessons. So we're in the middle here, and it says, the student says the number name sequence backwards from numbers to 10. Is there a lesson in here that supports that? You'll see the search bar at the bottom. And again, we'll pull up some Math Little Books and some activities that help support that concept. So that's a second way to search. You may just want to search by a keyword. And so this search bar across here, you can type in anything. I'm going to put in skip counting because I like skip counting. And if you hit search, you'll see that there's over 80 lessons that support skip counting from K to 2. So we wanted to narrow down that focus for you. You can search by grade. You can see we have grade K, 1 and 2 in here. You can search by type, so that would be an activity or a math little book, or by the strand from the curriculum. So again, that will narrow down your search to exactly what you're looking for. One last really great way to search. We talked earlier about the teaching journey, and one of the biggest stops in the journey that takes a long time is the planning process. And so across the top, you'll see a button that's called Plan. When I click on that, you'll see most recent plan and all plans. I'm going to take you into all plans. And what we've done in Mathology.ca is we wanted to give you a variety of ways of looking for really great plans or creating your own. As you know, when you first start with a new set of resources, it's really great to be able to understand what the planning process, the scope and sequence looks like for that right off the bat. And as you learn the product, then you start mixing and matching and bringing in your favorite resources. And so we have allowed you to do both. So I'm going to walk you through some of the built-in plans that we have here. So you can see at the bottom, we're looking at sample plans. We have a variety of options. We know that as you start the school year with math, you might want to start with number sense, or you could be starting with patterning or a variety of other routes that you might take. And we wanted to create a pathway for you built in as we go. So I'm going to go down to grade 2 sample long range pathway and option 2. When I click on that, you'll see down the left-hand side, there is a bar for almost every week in the school year, starting in September and going all the way through to the end of June. And option 2 for grade 2 starts with repeating patterns. So we're on repeating patterns. To the right of that will be math little books and lessons that support repeating patterns for that time of year. So your planning is laid out for you, which makes it a lot easier as you're first learning the resource. When I scroll up, you can see that the next week would look at counting, and you have some math little books and some lessons here. And then when you get into a time that's right around now, for instance, increasing and decreasing patterns, you'll see the math little books that we're going to talk about today, and some of the lessons we'll walk through today. So that is a sample plan. If you love it and you want to use it, maybe it's your first year with Mathology, up here at the top, you just say use sample plan, and that plan is in place for you to start right away. All of that planning is done for you. But as you get used to Mathology, it would be really great. Most teachers told us when we were researching this, it would be great to be able to start creating your own plan. So we have a button here that says create new plan. And you have a chance to start with a blank plan or use an existing one. So you might like the ones we have, but you want to build on it. You would choose the one on the right, use existing plan. Today, we're going to start with a blank one. And the first thing you get to do is name it. So I'm going to say October plan. You can name it anything you like. When you hit save, you'll see that you have a folder. You can title that folder anything you like. It could be that this is an October folder and you name this by the week, however you want to plan your week out. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of lessons and math little books, and they're called favorites. Every one of these lessons you'll see as we go through, you have a chance to put a favorite on it if it's one that you'll use quite often. And this planning tool is quite simple. It's a drag and drop. And we will address all the questions at the end if that's okay. So I know, Ray, you have a question, and we will work our way through that at the very end. So if you wouldn't mind holding your questions to then, we'll address them then. So if you want to start a plan, we're looking at lesson 28, operational fluency. I'll just drag it over here, and you can write in your comment. It could be, this is my favorite way to start this lesson, or embed a URL. If that's your lesson as well, then you can drag your next one over. And as you get to the bottom, you'll see that there's a chance for you to add a non-Mathology lesson. This is your chance to actually build in a URL. You might have your favorite lesson already. This one, when you add non-Mathology lesson, it gives you a chance to title that lesson, put a description in, and anything that has a URL, whether it's a website or on your Google Drive, something like that, You put that in there and save, and then you can drag and drop that in there as well. And you can drag and drop in grade 1 and grade 2. So say you have a combined grade, you'll be able to actually create your plan that way as well. So that is planning in Mathology. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, and we're going to take a look at what a lesson looks like in Mathology.ca. So I'm going to look at increasing and decreasing patterns. Every lesson in Mathology.ca has a very similar look and feel, so it becomes really easy to find what you're looking for. Every lesson has an about page, which we'll walk through. It has a details page, an assessment page, as well as related resources. On the far right-hand side, you'll see a long line that says professional learning. We have some videos in there that I'll share with you momentarily. And I have to say there's some construction going on in the background. I'm sorry about that noise. It wasn't there earlier. I'll try to talk a bit louder. So under the about page, you'll see that there's a brief description about this lesson, the activity size, the group size, your content background, the focus for the lesson, as well as the curriculum. And at the bottom, you'll see that the Pearson Canada Learning Progression, and this time when you see it, you'll see the content that fits exactly where you are in that learning progression highlighted in blue. So that concept is highlighted here. And this particular lesson has a couple of big ideas. So it's a very rich lesson, and it unpacks a couple of concepts at the same time. So that's the about. When you go into details, this is where your lesson really comes to life. I'll scroll up a little bit, and you'll see at the top of the lesson, the strand, the materials that you need for this lesson, as well as any line or assessment masters that you'll be using. And you'll see here that they are hot linked here, so you don't have to go looking for them. They're right on the page. They are in PDF and Word, so if you like the line master or the assessment master exactly as it is, print it off and use it if you like. But we know a lot of teachers would prefer to be able to change these based on the students you have in front of you from year to year. And so we have them here in Word as well, which allows you to modify them. Every lesson looks exactly the same. It's a 3-part lesson. We start with instructions for before, what to do during the lesson, ideas for differentiation and for combined grades. We also have consolidation, highlights for students, and those what to look for as you're doing this activity or lesson. And at the very bottom, we have probing questions. So as you're observing students doing these activities, it's one thing to see what they're doing, but you often want to know what they're thinking. And so these probing questions will really help uncover student thinking. As I scroll down, you'll see a section called Images. For those of you who know our activity kits, the print version, these will look very familiar. They are the activities from our activity kit so that you can project them and print them. So I'm going to click on each one of these so you can get a sense of the rich resources that are in here. So this is the same lesson I just walked you through. This is what the print version looks like, that lesson on the front page. And at the very bottom of each one of these, you'll see a print button. That allows you to print any one of these pages if you want. A lot of teachers like projecting these as well. That's the front side. On the back is really where this lesson comes to life. You'll see it's called Helping Students to Progress. What you might see here in next steps as the students are doing this activity, this is a great way of seeing where your students are, the places where they tend to get stuck with their math understanding, and the next steps are built in right on that page. And so that the goal here is to help students that are in this area progress through in their understanding from 1 right through to 6. This is really our learning progression come to life. And so understanding where your students are and the help that you can provide with them right on the page is really helpful. A lot of teachers love that about the activity kit, and it works this way as well in Mathology.ca. And again, you can print that off should you want to. Almost every activity in Mathology.ca has a teacher card, but also student cards. These, again, are projectable if you want to use this front of class, or you can print it off if you want. And every student card usually has 2 sides, an easy side and a more difficult side, and you can see both of those are here. And the last slide will provide you with an example of what one looks like completed, so a great model to follow. So that's the projectable version of the activities. We know that when you do each lesson, it would be really great to, you can follow the lesson plan as it is here, but we know that you don't often get a lot of chance for leaving classrooms for professional learning. And so we wanted to provide two different types of professional learning videos that you can access at any time. The top one's called a learning highlight video. I'll walk you through what that is, but these are with every single lesson, and it really helps you understand what this lesson is about and some of the things you might watch for as the students are doing that activity. And then the second one is called a Learning Connections video. There's 13 in total, and these take a longer, broader, almost a sky-high view at all the big ideas from your curriculum. So we'll walk through the learning highlights first. It's around a minute long, so I'll play the whole video. The second one we will also play, but maybe the first third. They are a little bit longer.
Let's look closely at this pattern. There are 2, 4, 6, 8 tiles, which are the numbers in the skip counting by 2 sequence. Some students may see the sequence as repeated addition. For example, 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6, and so on. Look at the patterns on the student card. Ask students how they can use the pattern rule to find how many tiles would be in the next term. For example, if the 4th term has 7 tiles, the 5th term would have 7 tiles plus 2 more, or 9 tiles. How many tiles would the 6th term have? For students who need more support relating increasing patterns to skip counting and repeated addition, refer to Patterning and Algebra Intervention Activity 3.
So you can see that it's a short video on how to do this lesson and what to look for. I'm going to play the first third of our Learning Connections video that looks at patterning and algebra. And I'll stop it partway through.
Patterns are everywhere, even at the fair. What patterns do you see? In this video, we'll explore the learning pathway for the big idea regularity and repetition form patterns that can be generalized and predicted mathematically, outlined in Pearson's learning progression. Several Mathology resources, such as Discrete Do Little Book, provide opportunities for students to identify, sort, and classify attributes and patterns, as well as to investigate repeating and increasing and decreasing patterns. One important concept that supports the big idea is identifying, sorting, and classifying attributes and patterns mathematically. Students begin to develop algebraic thinking by identifying, sorting, and classifying attributes. Attributes are characteristics or visual features of an object. In this kindergarten little book, these are first sorted according to color and shape. Encourage your students to sort by different attributes: size, shape, material, orientation, number, or color. Another important concept that's...
Now stop us there. You can see where that one is heading. It's unpacking 3 of those big conceptual threads under the big idea. And this one, I find you would probably want to dip in and dip out of a number of times throughout a unit. And you may want to watch it at the beginning of the unit. Whereas with our Learning Highlights video, that would be one I would watch probably at the beginning of each lesson, just to get a quick glimpse of what's happening with this lesson. I'm next going to take you to assessment. And with assessment, if you keep in mind, we were looking at the back of that teacher card where you're doing an activity, you are doing some observation of where your students are with that activity. It had 6 boxes. What's great about our assessment is it's the back of that card, but you're able to put your students into a class and drag and drop those students as you're witnessing them doing that activity. So it's as simple as pulling them down here as you go. I've seen this work on an iPad quite well. The real value here, though, I have to say, you can see where your students are. The most important part is the next steps. And so you can see we have 4 students in the first box where it says students identify increasing patterns but struggles to reproduce them concretely. So what can I do in the moment to help support these 4 students move along and get unstuck at this point? And so at the very bottom, you'll see next steps. When you click on next steps, you'll have some great tips of in the moment ideas that can help with those students that are in that one box. We'll go to the next one. We have 3 students here in the second box, the next steps here as well. So that the idea here is to really help your students go from the beginning and get a much better understanding of what this activity is trying to do in a really visual way. So that's a great plan. Now, as you're doing this assessment, what you're assessing here is actually something that you can now track, especially when you're getting close to maybe parent-teacher night or you're preparing for report cards. There's a way of tracking what you just did. And so I'm going to take us up to the top in a section called Analytics. When I click on Analytics, you'll see there's Class Analytics and Student Analytics. I'm going to go into Class. And we're going to take a look at Grade 2 here. And you can see all the students and the lessons that you have just done and where they are in those 6 boxes that we just looked at. So the lesson is here, repeating patterns, for example, and you'll see 3 different types of icons. There will be an orange one that says in progress, and that means you have a lot of students that are doing quite well with this activity. You're good to go here. You'll see that you're on track. You have a number of students that are in that 6th box. You're fine there. And there's one other icon that's red, and it will show up if you have a lot of students maybe in the first 2 boxes for that activity. And you know that you need to go back and maybe support those students a bit more with that concept. The view actually allows you to go right back to that assessment piece that you did already and see where you were. And you'll want to know about next steps. And so I will share that with you right now. As you can see, there is a pattern here about next steps and helping students to progress. Right after that assessment, there is a section called Related Resources. When I click on that, you'll see that we've built some mini lessons that help support students that need some help with those next steps. We have some on-grade mini lessons. We have a couple of intervention lessons as well as an extension. So for instance, if we have students that are on grade, identifying and reproducing increasing patterns numerically, there's a mini lesson here if you want to give them a little extra support. And they are quite short, much shorter than the lesson that you just saw, and you can print these off. As I scroll down, we have a couple of interventions here. The first one looks at students having difficulty identifying the pattern rule. If you have a group of students stuck there, this mini lesson will really help with that. So again, you might have a group of students and you can do a mini lesson that supports that. And any materials that you need are here, again, in PDF and Word. And you can print them off. And there's a second intervention as well, and as an extension. We've also looked at possible misconceptions. And so the lesson that we're looking at here, the one that comes up the most we found was a student doesn't think it is necessary to include the start number in a pattern rule. When you click on that, there is a what to do, again, in the moment to help with that possible misconception. As I scroll down, you'll see that there's an after lesson as well. There's some ideas for next steps in class. Again, you can print those off. And next steps at home if you have a really great connection with your parents at home. And again, these can be printed off as well. Further down, you'll see that there's support for word walls. And at the bottom, and this is typically where you see a slider that's built upon that learning progression, you'll see related lessons that go up or down based on your needs. And so you can see there's an intervention lesson. This is the one that was talked about in that first video we watched. There's an on-grade lesson, a second on-grade lesson, and as you go, you can see that there are more lessons that help support this big idea. So that is a really quick walkthrough, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about favorites. So across the top, you can see there's a heart on this one. It's one of my favorite lessons. When I click on favorites, You can see that any of the lessons that you've loved and you think, I'm going to teach this again, or it's helping you with your planning, they will show up here. You can see the heart. The other thing that we did, and we did a lot of research and classroom observations, and we saw that when teachers are planning for a day, you will typically bring everything that you need for that lesson in and put it on your physical desk. And so we wanted to recreate that desktop for you to help you be extremely organized each day. So you can see here pinned lessons. You'll see that there are favorites beside it and pins. Where does that show up? I'm going to go back to the home screen. And this is exactly where we started today. And you can see you have 3 pinned lessons. That is the lesson I just walked you through. I'm going to take you for a quick walk through our Math Little Books, as well as that intervention lesson. So it's nice to have those right handy. In a couple of weeks, we actually have one more improvement coming here. If you have created a lesson for the week, you will want to pin that lesson and have it on your desktop as well. So those plans that you have here, you can pin them and put them on your desktop as well. So again, trying to make this as simple as possible for you to have exactly what you need at your fingertips. So the last piece I'm going to walk you through today is the support for the Math Little Books. I'm going to look at the best surprise. So the lesson for the Math Little Books look very similar to the lessons we just walked through. There's an about, there's a details, as well as related resources. And you can see that Learning Connections video is here as well. In the about page, of course, you find out what this book is about, that it's grade 2, it's a little book, and it looks at patterning. We have a reading level here, and it's based on Fountas and Pinnell. The math focus, your curriculum that is uncovered as you're using this Math Little Book. And again, the big ideas that are being unpacked from this little book around the big ideas from the curriculum. And here you can see it's a very rich resource, and it unpacks 2 concepts in this Math Little Book. When we go into details, this is a chance for you to actually have a read aloud version of that Math Little Book that you can project. So I'm going to go into that now. Any of you that have the print Math Little Books, on the back, there's a QR code and a URL, and that links you directly to this read and listen version. And when you have Mathology.ca, it's built right on the page here as well. So the read and listen is a really great read aloud version of this Math Little Book. I'm just going to play one of the pages for you today.
Gramps, we're having the best birthday ever, says Ethan. It's not over yet, replies Gramps. Your mother says I can give you one more surprise.
Hooray!
Wow, what is it, asks Emma. You'll have to wait and see, answers Gramps. Please, tidy up, and then we'll hop in the car.
So these read aloud versions are really great for front of class. If you have the print resources, they help in a couple of other ways. You can send that URL home for the parents so that can be read aloud, and that keeps you from having to send the Math Little Book home. So it might last a bit longer. And they're also really great for listening centers. And we have some support here on the first read as well for that little book. And when we go into related resources, some ideas for after reading, and any of the line and assessment masters that you need for this Math Little Book are right on the page. You don't have to go looking for them. And again, they're here in PDF and in Word. And at the very bottom, we have a really great slider, again, based on that Pearson Canada Learning Progression, that gives you some ideas for Math Little Books that you might want to go backwards. So we have some below grade ones here that are wonderful that you can use with this Math Little Book, or more that are on grade as well. So that is a very, very quick walkthrough of Mathology.ca. We're getting to the end of our session, but I have a few more slides to share with you around Mathology.ca. So bear with me a few more moments, please. So as you can see, Mathology.ca is carefully curated curriculum-focused lessons. For grade 1 in English, we have 101 math lessons from our activity kit. It includes 34 K-1 Math Little Books, that K-3 learning progression, plus those professional learning resources that show you how to unpack each lesson and give you those big idea supports. For those of you who are interested in Mathology.ca, it is in beta format, and that will be the webinar that we will walk you through that entire one in a couple weeks. If you're interested in that, let us know at the end of today, and we'll invite you to that one once we have a date set for that. And at grade 2, we have available 105 plus math lessons from the activity kit, as well as 38 of the grade 1 and 2 math little books, the learning progressions, plus 160 professional learning videos, all in one place. The next question I typically get when I reach this point, and it's a good question, how much does Mathology.ca cost? So we have a variety of ways of looking at this. We have a 1-year subscription, and it's per teacher. It's $140. We also have a 5-year subscription that gives you a bit of a discount over 5 years. It's $665. And something that's really new, especially those of you who have combined grades, we have grades 1 and 2 currently in Mathology.ca. Your license actually gives you access to both grades, which is a huge deal. So right now we have grades 1 and 2 in there. We will have grade 3 in about a year's time. And each time we add a grade, you aren't, it's not more expensive. It is that same price for you for that teacher license. We also have bundle pricing, and at the end of this webinar I'm going to put up a slide of your local Pearson representative based on where you are across Canada today. Just know that we do have some discounts currently. If you purchase, say, Mathology.ca 5-year subscription, it does give you a really great discount on the print resources. So I'm going to ask you again, if that's something that's of interest to you, I'll put up the slide of your local Pearson rep, and you can poke them and ask them a few more questions about that. The other thing that I wanted to share with you today, this was really fast. I know it was fast. I actually had a whole Starbucks coffee before this and probably went even faster than normal. It's a lot of ground to cover in a short period of time. You may want to try this longer and give it a really good go. Maybe even try a lesson in class or a week's worth of lessons. If you want to try this for longer, on the screen here you'll see you have an option for a 45-day free preview. How to get that? You'll see etr.mathology.ca. That will take you to a registration page that will set you up for a 45-day free preview. And when you do that, you can register for grade 1 or grade 2 or both if need be. So just know that that option is available as well. Now I'm going to take some questions, but before I do that, I'm just going to pull up the order information or any questions you might have past today. These are local Pearson representatives. If you have any questions, I'm going to leave this screen up. That's a lot of information to take down. Know that it's there. So I am going to, Soyan's been sending me some questions in from your chat. So I'm going to go through them. Let's see here. So Ray, I know you had one of the first questions. Are the sample plans for grades 1 and 2 aligned to help with combined grades teaching? In a way they are, Ray, and I'm going to actually have someone follow up with you with a better answer than I'm going to give you today. But each one of these grades align to the curriculum, and you can sort that way as well. And I will get a further answer for you shortly around what that looks like when they are aligned in Mathology.ca. And Angela, I think you have a very similar question here. Any supports for split grades? So right now we do have suggestions for split grades, and there will be more coming around that type of support. We just finished getting grade 2 in here. So now that we have both grades available to us, there will be some more suggestions around split grades and how to make that easier. And what does beta mean for the French version? It's a good question. So much like any piece of software, we start trying it out and testing it. And that's the beta version. And when all the bugs are worked out, all the lessons are in there, and the videos are there, it goes from beta to a published version, and that's the one that we start selling. We currently have a beta version of the French, which means at this point in October, we have lessons in the Mathology.ca framework that you can actually take a look at. And that's why I'm going to be doing a webinar in a couple of weeks to walk you through there. And by the end of November, almost all the lessons will be in there, and we'll reach out to our French immersion folks and give you a chance to do a 45-day free trial of Mathology.ca at that time as well. So long story short, it's close to being ready, but not quite. And Monique, I'm seeing your question here. I'm wondering whether the same amount of French resources are offered in French as well. Yes, so everything that you see on the English side, everything that I showed you today will be adapted for the French side. It's the same in print as well as digital. And again, I use the word adapted rather than translated. We wanted it to make sure that the math, the language doesn't get in the way of the math. And so these are very carefully adapted for French immersion. And Teresa, will you be making a combined resource for grades 2, 3? So we are currently under development for grade 3. We're doing some prototype testing right now, and by the spring, I think we'll have a good sense of what the pieces will be for grade 3. They will then go into Mathology.ca, and then we'll start looking at some combined grade ideas that will make that easier. So we know a lot of you have combined grades. There's no silver bullet, but there certainly are ways of making your planning time a lot easier. And those are the types of things that we'll be building over time now that we have the grade 1 and 2 content in here and the grade 3 for next year as well. Are there any other questions at this time? Oh, and I see another question here. Okay, so I'm looking at Leland's question. I purchased for my school Mathology Little Books and activity materials last May, so thank you for that. Is there a discount to get an account to Mathology.ca? Currently, there isn't a discount on Mathology.ca. The price is actually already built in quite low. What I would suggest is you give it a 45-day free trial now that you have the print resources and see how that goes. And we'll follow back with you at the end of that trial and see how that's worked for you. And I see there's a few new messages here. So there's a question about the session at the end of November. I think we have a November 10th is the last session for us. Is it for the French resources? That one is not. So it will be a repeat of this one. Any of you who are on here about French immersion, we will be adding 2 more webinars that will look directly at Mathology.ca. And we just haven't had a chance to pick those dates yet. So if you want to go to one of those, just let us know in the chat box, and we will send you an email once we have those dates set, and we can give you a good walkthrough of Mathology.ca grade 1 at that time. It'll be 2 dates in November for sure, though. Have I captured all the questions, Soyan? I see there's no more questions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stay on here for the next 5 minutes. I'm going to keep the screen open. Soyan's going to stay with me. There might be more questions. For those of you, your questions are answered, feel free to leave us for tonight and know that we really appreciate that you were here. It was great to have you. And Anne, if you want to put your question in chat, we will take a look at that. So for grade 3, 4, in English, we're looking at probably another year yet. And in French, it takes roughly 8 months to adapt. So we're further away from 3, 4, 2, 3 definitely for next year, this time next year. And I think Anne had a question. And Anne, thank you for raising your hand. No one's used that feature before, and that's awesome. So we will get to you. So Monique, if you wanted to sign up for a French webinar, I think we have captured your question in the chat. And so we will follow up with you when we have the dates for that. So nothing new for you to do at this point. You'll get an email from us once we have a date or two for those, the French immersion ones. And Anne, your question about how do I access the little books? Are you talking about in Mathology.ca or the print version? Could you give us a little bit more to go with that question? And Anne, I'm going to take you off mute. Why don't you just chat with us live, and I can help you out with your question. Okay, so Anne, do you have Mathology.ca right now? If you do not, I would say sign up for a 45-day free trial, and that gives you access to the Math Little Books. So that was etr.mathology.ca. And if you have them and you're having trouble accessing them for some reason, then you're right. The help on Mathology.ca is a great way. It gets you directly to someone who can take a look at your yes, we own it. The school has it. Yeah, you should have access to the Math Little Books for at least grade 1, if not grade 2. And so why don't you leave that with me? I have a way of contacting you since you were here today, and I'll have someone follow up with you if that's okay. Awesome. And we'll get right back to you, okay? Well, it's really nice meeting all of you today. Thanks for taking time out to spend an afternoon with us. We know you have a busy day that you've already had, and you spent some time with us, so it's appreciated. Any of you have asked questions that I promised to follow up, we'll get that to you in the next couple of days, and Anne will definitely get back to you tomorrow if we can. Okay, so have a great evening. Really appreciate it, and take care.